Hello, this is Jonathan Liu at the Conference Board. Welcome to Indications, our discussion of the ideas, trends, and data shaping the world economy. I'm joined by my co-host, Brian Shakin, a senior economist here at the Conference Board.
Jonathan, excited to be talking innovation this week.
So, Brian, we happen to be recording this on the third week of May 2017, and it's really impossible to avoid the sort of national drama coming to a head. I'm talking, of course, about the NBA playoffs, which look to be headed to a third straight Cleveland-Golden State showdown.
Right. That is clearly the main topic right now, burning up Twitter.
So if I were to ask you or any other informed observer to rank the best basketball players in the world right now, just about everybody would have some combination of LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry at 1, 2, and 3, right?
I thought we're talking innovation on this podcast.
So I actually looked this morning at ESPN and Sports Illustrated, which you would assume would want unique content, actually not only had the top 3 players identically, they had the top 6.
And how does this relate to innovation again?
So now compare that consensus around a silly topic like basketball with another set of annual rankings I looked up this morning, which happened to be the world's most innovative companies. The main one I found on Google was Fast Company that ranked them number 1, Amazon, number 2, Google, and number 3, Uber. And then the second piece I saw was Forbes, which had Tesla at number 1, Salesforce.com at number 2, and Regeneration Pharmaceuticals at number 3.
Obviously, you need to know that the criteria is different, but that weighing financial results versus marketing hype versus actual promise are some of the ways in which businesses are thinking about innovation, even if there's no consensus whatsoever as to what the main metric should be.
Sure, but the fact remains that the world's basketball fans have somehow synthesized points, rebounds, assists, and constantly advancing advanced stats into some sort of agreement on what makes a really transcendent player. Why aren't economists like yourself closer to a more common understanding of what defines business innovation and how we might measure it?
Well, 2 of our colleagues are working on this problem on a daily basis. Coming up, their report on the Signposts of Innovation.
Since 1916, the Conference Board has been a beacon for business leaders and policymakers navigating a global economy where the only constant is change. We helped usher in the 8-hour workday in the 1920s and the full arrival of women and minorities into the workforce in the 1970s. From globalization to digitization, the Great Depression to the Great Recession, our data and research has shaped critical decisions across industries and continents. The economy is transforming faster today than ever before, and every worker, consumer, and citizen needs the fact-based guidance once reserved for governments and boardrooms. Welcome to Indications from the Conference Board, our latest reading on what's new, what matters, and what's next.
Welcome back to Indications. Joining Brian and me are Ataman Ozyildirim, the Conference Board's Director of Business Cycle Research.
Hi, Jonathan.
And Janet Howe, Senior Economist specializing in intangible assets and economic growth.
Hi, Jonathan.
So, Janet and Ataman, what is innovation and why is it important to define it?
Well, innovation is a topic that everyone is talking about, and you can't just kind of look around without seeing the word innovation in business press. It's really important because in the long term, that's really what drives value creation for businesses and for economies. But it's really hard to define. It's really a big topic, a very complex area, and it's hard to really nail it down. Everybody has their own definitions. In our report that recently came out, we came up with a very basic but broad definition that looks at innovation as a process that leads to production or creation of new products and services, new business processes that lead to new and greater value creation.
And the report that we've just released is actually part of a larger project?
Yes, we call it the Signposts of Innovation, and it is part of a longer project that looks at how to measure innovation, how to make sense of all the different innovation metrics that are out there. And the Conference Board has been working on this area of innovation for 10 or 15 years. There have been a number of reports and events around this. We have a number of councils. And we thought that we would begin to collect all of the information that we're gathering from our conversations in councils and conferences and organize them into this Signposts of Innovation project.
And are companies, do they see the urgency of specifically measuring innovation, or are you at a point where you're still having to convince companies that that's a specific, like that making that definition is important?
The motivation for focusing this project on the measurement of innovation really came from innovation leaders themselves. What we were hearing is that they needed a good way to think about all of the various innovation metrics that are floating around and make sense of it all and relate it to the work that they're doing. There's a lot of demands from senior management, corporate boards on focusing energies and resources on innovation programs. But they were really lacking a way to systematically talk about what those programs are, how they're progressing, what their capabilities and capacities are. So they were really looking for ways to understand innovation better through measurement so that they can manage better and make better business decisions.
And I'd like to add a little bit to the definition of innovation. When someone talks about innovation, it may come to your mind as scientists in white lab coat. Actually, that's the first generation of innovation models that emerged in the 1950s. And then the models evolved over the decades. Now it's to the fifth, or even people say it's the sixth generations of innovation models that many of them do not involve scientists. So if you are still thinking innovation as scientists in white lab coats, you are like half a century behind. So the innovations we talk about, as Ataman mentioned just now, so many different types. And we actually, our project is trying to annul all kinds of forms of innovation, even the new ones that haven't emerged, to be able to be measured by our flexible framework. So we actually have a very open mind for all kinds of new possible innovations.
Janet makes a really good point. Sometimes I think of innovation as throwing a bunch of people into a dark room and asking them to identify an animal that's in there. And the elephant is the animal in there that nobody can really see. And everyone kind of picks up a different part of it, right? And their description really depends on their immediate experience. But the totality of the animal is really something completely different.
So how then would you go about telling an organization that has very specific needs in terms of what they're trying to accomplish through an innovation process about how to choose the metrics to measure the success or failure of their particular innovation process?
Well, Brian, I think that first of all, you tend to overestimate the innovation process undergoing in companies right now. U.S. is considered the center of innovation of the world, and U.S. companies, there are some companies who are considered the leaders of innovations. But from our talk with executives, it seems like there is a broad range of companies who are actually trying to just start doing innovation. To start to think about how I can start doing innovation. And for companies who are doing well, I don't think they may have a very specific goal. I mean, they may have a clear goal of making money. But other than that, how they are going to achieve that through innovation, when there are new forms of innovation emerging, it's actually hard to determine the goals of innovation.
And at the end of the day, it's really different for every company. Their company culture is different. The industries, the sectors, the countries they're operating in is different. So there's probably no one-size-fits-all solution. But throughout the various conversations that we've been having with our members, a few principles started to emerge on how to think about using metrics to drive innovation performance and innovation outcomes. And some of those are basically focused on understanding innovation as a process and linking the management and measurement of innovation to the whole life cycle of innovation. Janet has spent a lot of time looking into this, and that means that the life cycle is not really the end point where you have an invention, you go through the steps and you commercialize it. It's really looking at from A to Z, from the beginning, project management, portfolio management, and deciding which projects are going to make it forward, and then tracking all the way to commercialization and then making it part of regular business.
And more importantly, as executives, as an executive who participate in innovation, sometimes you need to convince the board members about the budget of innovation projects. And when you have made contribution to innovations and potential revenues, you also need to be able to state to your bosses, to the board members, to CEOs and so on, that you have contributed to the revenue, to the profit through innovation projects, and how you did that. And without innovation metrics, it's not very easy for you to tell such a story. And similarly, if you want to gain support from your peer executives to support you in innovations, you also need the language, the numbers, the metrics to convince them, to communicate with them, and also give them the language to support you in the innovation process.
That's interesting. Have you hit the objection that takes the position that true innovation is sort of an act of genius, like a Steve Jobs coming up with the iPhone? Do you get objections that even measuring innovation or trying to put it into a framework like that detracts from the creativity of it? And how do you respond?
And I think the example of iPhone is a great example. It's actually Steve Jobs. His great success, part of it is design. Another very important part is marketing. Because what I heard is that actually Japan has developed a similar design a few years before Steve Jobs, but Japanese seem to stay in their domestic market. So to be able to, many people have a great technology. It's the path, the road from the technology to commercialization. That's a very difficult road. And Steve Jobs, he was very good at it.
There's somewhat of an inherent irony in innovation work, and it's inherently risky. You don't know what the outcomes will be, and trying to put too many metrics around it could actually potentially kill off a really valuable project, and because it's very difficult to foresee where innovations are going to lead you. So companies have to find the right mix of metrics and the right approach to thinking about those metrics in managing innovation.
So would you suggest companies sort of look at what kinds of innovations they're trying to achieve, and then sort of find some specific milestones along the way to judge how that process is going? Is that sort of the process you have in mind?
I actually would recommend companies to first think, which generations of innovation models are you at? Are you still thinking about innovation as scientists wearing a white lab coat? Or some companies are very into customer-driven innovations. That's a step forward. That's the second generation. The third generation is to combine both processes to collaborate between your R&D department and also your customer-related departments. The fourth generation is to shorten the innovation time, that you have other business functions taking part in it. And the fifth generation would have the IT-enabled innovation, like participants from the outside, and then ecosystem becomes so important. So I think the innovation management is not at a very advanced stage right now. So I think some very preliminary questions are valuable to ask yourself, like, where am I in the innovation generations?
And it's important to keep in mind that these different generations that Janet is talking about could be coexisting in industry or even within the same company. Different projects could be making use of these different generational approaches. So they coexist in our world today. And not only that, the evolution of these ways of doing innovation has been continuing. So we've seen the advent of digital technologies, cloud computing, and predictive analytics. So all of these things are contributing to the newer generations of innovation modeling.
So Janet, you said that the first generation of thinking about innovation really started in the 50s with kind of white scientists in white lab coats.
Right.
Is it that each successive stage or generation is tied to a different stage of technology? Is it because now we're in the cloud or in the software, it requires a different way of thinking about innovation?
I think sometimes it's driven by the technology, but other times it may not. For example, the evolution from the first to the second, which is the market-driven, the customer-driven innovation models, it is actually driven by the differentiated demands from customers. So it can be driven by many different things.
And they can all coexist, even
Right.
the stage from the 50s can still exist.
Of course, stage in the 50s are still very important. Like when you watch a science fiction movie, the major players are scientists. So that's the first generation. They are still very important. And for companies who are using a gate system to manage innovation, that's the first generation, or maybe the second, because first and second are linear process, starting from a new technology to commercialization, or starting from a new customer need to a new product or services. And gate systems are still widely in use today, and they are actually belong to the earlier generations.
That's really fascinating. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and actually dig into the framework of innovation that we're looking into right now.
Is your industry destined for major talent shortages as the nation's workforce ages? Will today's digital revolution ever deliver the productivity gains of past innovations? What does it take for an organization to become a leader in sustainability? What's the state of consumer confidence in the US, growth in Europe, reform in China, and executive pay worldwide? Each year, the Conference Board examines these questions and hundreds like them from our offices in New York, Beijing, and Brussels. You may be just a click away from the answers. From Zurich Financial Services to AARP, corporate membership in the Conference Board means every employee has access to our reports, webcasts, and events. Go to conferenceboard.org/sign-in to check if your company's a member and start sharpening your edge today.
Welcome back to Indications. As the title suggests, the report Ataman and Janet have produced is built around 6 signposts of innovation. Ataman, could you tell me a little bit about this signpost framework? Why did you choose this framework? And what are these signposts of innovation?
As we were discussing earlier, Brian, the topic of innovation is very complex and very, very broad. And in our approach to measurement, we didn't want to take sides, and we wanted to acknowledge the complexity of the issue at hand, and wanted to acknowledge that there are really several different dimensions of innovation activity that companies are undertaking. And this approach is somewhat related to the other area I work on, which is leading indicators, business cycle indicators. Just like in business cycles, there's no single theory of business cycles, or there's no single theory of innovation. Until we get to that point, we were looking for a way to systematically organize the various metrics and measurement approaches that are in use or being talked about. And that really gave rise to this approach of organizing the metrics under signposts of innovation.
Yes, and I think that approach is incredibly compelling, and I want to get more deeply into some of the signposts and sort of some of the ways in which those signposts can be used by members using this framework. But first, could you just introduce the signposts briefly?
So we identified 6 signposts of innovation. These are broad areas or dimensions of innovation activity that we see at companies that innovation leaders are focusing on. So those 6 areas are technology, digitization, environmental and social sustainability, customer experience and brands, the internal innovation networks or the culture of innovation of a company, and external innovation ecosystems that companies are operating in.
And I think when I hear that list, one thing that's striking to me is that you used technology and digitization as separate signposts. And I'm wondering what brought you to that decision?
That's a great question, and we've had a lot of debate about this, and some people think that it's all about digitization, and that really should be the main signpost when you're looking into innovation. Others think that digitization is the wave of the future, and you won't survive as a company unless you move into digital technologies. But we ended up identifying or defining 2 separate signposts about this, because technology is really about the application of science and technology to create and provide new solutions to address customer needs. So it's a broader topic. It's more about research and development and basic science. And it includes areas like biology, pharmaceuticals, chemistry, and material science. So it's really a lot broader than digitization, which is really about the application of new digital technologies in mobile computing, cloud computing, big data, and predictive analytics in the application of finding solutions.
And I think one of the hard things about the digitization signposts for executives is wrapping their heads around, okay, how can my business use cloud computing? So is there a different approach businesses have to use, or those who are trying to sell senior executives on innovative processes that relate specifically to digitization than would be the case for some of the other signposts that you mentioned?
I think digitization really highlights some of the complexity that we're seeing around innovation activity, in that, we are focused on measurement and metrics, and in the signposts of digitization, we come across a lot of metrics that are very different from what people have been using traditionally as innovation metrics. So you start to look at digital platforms, you start to look at subscription, customer loyalty. So some of these things are really different kinds of metrics that people are faced with in a very different, very new way.
And I think one of the interesting things about this report and the signpost framework is how easily one signpost flows into another. So Jenna, I'd like to ask you about a signpost, customer experience and branding. They think we've seen increasingly that marketing employees need digital skills in order to do the kind of data analysis to see how customers are reacting to a particular marketing or branding approach. And I know you've done a lot of research in the area of intangible assets, which for listeners who are not familiar with the concept of intangible assets, it's the idea that, for example, the logo of Coca-Cola has value to the company. It's not a machine, it's not literally something that you can package, but nonetheless, it has immense value. That image on that can has incredible value that if Coca-Cola suddenly lost the right to use that, they would suffer greatly as a result. So my question to you, Janet, is tell me some more about this customer experience and branding signpost, and how should our members go about thinking and measuring it?
Brian, that's a very good question. As I mentioned before, the road from having a new technology to commercialize it is a very difficult road. Many companies may have the technology but can't successfully commercialize our product. And if you have a good brand, it really gives you a much better chance. So use your brand, use marketing, you can inform people before you launch the product. So it's easier for customers to use your product, to have a better expectation about the product that is coming in. And there are other ways that branding and customer experience can contribute to successful innovation. For example, the second generation of innovation models, which where the innovation is driven by customer needs. So if your innovation is driven by customers, and you get feedback from customers that they want a certain improvement to your product, they want a certain variety of your product, and when you develop that, actually your rate of success would be higher because they're already asking for it, and it may require a less amount of marketing budget because your customers actually, they want that. So I think that it's very important to realize that branding and customer experience are closely related to innovation. And from what I heard from a recent brand council, customer experience council, what the members talk about is that they have cross-functional teams getting feedback from customers and then use cross-functional teams to develop product innovations.
Some people might be disagreeing with me on this point, but I often think of the branding and innovation issue as a chicken and egg problem. So brands help companies to drive forward new innovations because they need to maintain and build on the brand value. But at the same time, new innovations inherently bring in a brand value to a company. So without that innovation, the brand wouldn't exist.
Do you agree with that, Janet? I think, is there...
Yeah, I agree with Ataman. If a company relies on its old product and doesn't really launch new products, then actually I don't think it's a very... like even Apple. Apple is trying to launch different versions to create product innovations and so on. So it's both ways between innovation, brand, and customer experience.
What I found really striking about the report that we just put out is the signpost metaphor itself. So it's not the stages of innovation or these prerequisites for innovation, but it's an idea that it's not laying out a road for how every company can innovate. And I'm wondering, how are you thinking about a particular company using the framework, like deciding, at this point we should be focusing on the digitization angle as opposed to technology or customer experience?
So again, I think it goes back to the approach to measurement that we're taking, which is eclectic and agnostic in a way, and it really takes this very complex area and puts a systematic framework around it so that you can think of it as a scoreboard or a dashboard, and this framework would help you to put together a dashboard like that. And these are the main areas that companies work on when they undertake innovation activity. But for a given company or in a given industry, different areas might be more important. So a company might put more emphasis on the digital side versus the external environment, or vice versa, depending on the environment, the external environment that they're working on.
Well, I think this signpost give you a structure. The structure is not strict, so it actually gives you a lot of flexibility for the new forms or innovations and so on. As I said, it's so important because innovation is such a fuzzy concept. So many things are happening. So it's very important to have a structure, but you need flexibility in the structure. And a company does not need all 6 signposts to be successful in innovation. But if you have ignored some of the signposts, for example, when Ataman went through the list of 6 signposts, if you wonder why sustainability is in this signpost framework, or why ecosystem is in there, it actually signals a good opportunity for you for new ways of exploring innovation opportunities. If you haven't thought about sustainability, you may not realize that actually there are companies who are actually launching new products that will contribute to environmental sustainability, either to improve on the customers' attitude, perception of the company, or improve on employee engagement. And there are companies who are working hard on the ecosystem, because right now there are people are saying that it's not a competition of companies in terms of innovation, it's competition of ecosystems in terms of innovation. So in addition to the measurement side of the framework, it also is a conceptual framework that helps you to think about innovations.
So this signpost framework could really help a company to identify gaps in terms of their innovation activities and in innovation metrics. We've also sorted through the existing innovation metrics that are out there, and we've put together a list of 400, 500 different metrics that are out there, and some of the data is available, some of it is private company level data, but we have identified the variables that people use, and we use the framework to organize those 500 or so metrics into these different areas of signposts. And within that, we have a further classification of the metrics on where they are related relative to the life cycle of innovation. Are they inputs into the innovation process? Are they throughputs or facilitating factors? Or are they outputs? So this way of classifying the metrics helps executives to think about an organizational conceptual framework, identify where they're strong in, where they're weak in, are there any gaps that they need to fill, to have a more complete, a holistic picture of innovation activity within the company.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting way of describing how members should use this report, because you're really showing how you have this basket of indicators. It's going to be different for every company, which of those indicators are important, and also that innovation is an incredibly deliberate process. And there's sort of this trade-off between making sure you have a roadmap to know where you're going versus giving your team the flexibility to create the process that you need to create in order to get to the place that you want to go. And so one of the other signposts that Janet has alluded to, but I think deserves some more discussion, is this idea of an internal innovation network or innovation culture. And I've seen some organizations start using this approach of using innovation labs and incubators to help lubricate their innovation process. What do you think of using this type of approach of creating a separate group within an organization to sort of lead the innovation process in this fashion?
You know, Brian, that really depends on what company and what their objectives are. There are a number of companies that have innovation labs, innovation incubators, innovation departments, but others think more in terms of the cross-section of the company, and they really focus on a company-wide culture of innovation. So this culture issue has really been coming up very strongly in a lot of the conversations we've been having, and that's what the internal innovation network refers to. How is the innovation activity organized? How does it relate to different departments? How does it work with finance and accounting and marketing and strategic planning? So all of these different elements holistically have to come together to drive the innovation activity forward.
Yes, so innovation, you cannot think of it as the job of the R&D department only. So innovation actually requires many different business functions. In terms of innovation culture, you may want to start with a good innovation strategy, a good reward system, incentive system. You have the right human capital. You have the right set of people who are creative and collaborative, and you have people who can reach out to outside sources, and things like that. Is actually quite a complex concept of innovation culture.
And Janet, you've started doing some work to identify which occupations are most innovative within an organization. So that sort of dovetails well with your discussion about sort of trying to figure out within an organization which areas of the organization are going to be most innovative. Can you talk a little bit about what you've found so far?
Oh, yes. So I would like to shout out here, just like what I emphasized, that if you think of innovation as scientists wearing white lab coat, you are still in the first generation and half a century behind. And in today's companies, what we found out is that the managers, the executives, actually, they could be contributing more to innovations than scientists. Because if you think about the generations of innovation models. The first generation is R&D driven. Second generation becomes customer driven, that requires sales managers, customer service people, and then when it goes to third, fourth, and fifth, then it needs a lot of collaboration across the business functions, and both inside and outside of your company. And there you need many skills that actually are managers have very strong skills related to that. So what we found is that managers are becoming very important in promoting innovations, especially the more recent generations of innovation models.
So what Janet is talking about is this new research that we've started to undertake to follow up with the Signpost framework, to look a little bit more deeply into some of those issues about what makes innovative labor and how companies can organize their workforces around that. And so that's really points to the next stage in our project, which is now that we have the systematic framework of signposts of innovation, how do we look at the relationships between the different metrics within those signposts? How are those metrics related with each other? How are the signposts related with each other? And to understand a little bit better about how to apply this signpost project.
Can you speak a little bit, Ataman, about your process and the conference board process of actually speaking to real-world companies and shaping the next iteration of this research? Where are you going out? How are you deriving data from the world, I guess?
So this project is in some ways unique for the conference board because we've done a lot of field work with our members in developing it at the same time as we do a lot of research on the academic literature. So we're really bringing together and marrying what we learn from our members and what we learn from the lab coat research and synthesizing that to get something that's really practical and applicable. And a really big thank you goes to our program directors in the council's program who brought us together with the innovation councils. We have a number of councils that are focused on innovation activity and related activities. And we've had a number of meetings and conversations with them. And some of the early thinking on the framework was field tested with them. So not only did they have input, they also kind of gave us feedback in developing this. So one of the next things we're going to be doing is to go back to those innovation leaders and begin to ask them about what are the top metrics that they're thinking about as they look at this framework. What are missing metrics that should be there, and how do we rank different metrics? So we'll be going back to our members, business leaders, to learn more about how they apply innovation metrics and how we can start to populate these signposts with actual data.
And for some of our new listeners, can you just briefly explain what a council is at the Conference Board?
Councils are a feature of the Conference Board for a long time. They are groups, of small groups of business executives that are organized around topical or functional areas, and like innovation leaders or finance leaders who meet several times in a given year, and with the help of their executive committees and the program directors, they set their own agenda and look at important issues and learn from each other. There's a lot of peer learning going on in our councils.
What's the time frame for when our members can expect to see more research coming out of this project?
So our report has been recently published and it's being disseminated, and we welcome feedback about that. And going forward, we have the Innovative Labor Index work that we're putting together into a short report. We've also undertaken a couple of different ways to gather new data, and one of them is a global state of the innovation survey that was fielded a couple of months ago. We're just sorting through the analysis, and that will also yield another report over the summer months that will be interesting and will give us a way to look into this issue of the culture of innovation based on survey data.
And I think we're going to include a link in our show notes that really anybody listening can add their experiences in the innovation field, because I think it's really every industry and every position is. I mean, this is an issue that affects everyone, really.
Yeah, and for disruptive innovations, if you don't pay attention, your company may be in trouble.
Thanks, Janet, Ataman, Brian. This has been Indications. Please subscribe to us on your podcatcher of choice, and we hope to hear from you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.